Evan Price didn't just replace his wife, he erased her. After she helped him survive bankruptcy, he left her at a roadside motel and married the investor's daughter who saved his image, not his soul. So when he invited his ex-wife to his wedding and seated her in the back row, he thought it was mercy. He thought she was there to feel small. Still broke. Still grateful to be invited. What Evan didn't know was that the land beneath his empire no longer belonged to him. And before the night was over, his wedding would become the moment everything he stole finally came back to collect its debt. Stay with me, because this story doesn't end with screaming. It ends with silence. And silence can ruin a man faster than rage ever could. Before we begin, take 1 second, subscribe to the channel, and comment where you're watching from. Now let's go. You can sit back there. Evan Price didn't whisper it. He didn't need to. He pointed with 2 fingers, sharp and careless, toward the final pew near the doors, far from the aisle, far from the family, far from the light. Marissa Hale didn't argue. She nodded once. People nearby pretended not to hear, but their eyes followed her anyway. Charleston society knew Evan Price. They knew his family money, his sharp suits, his smile that never quite reached his eyes. They also knew the story he told about his first wife. She didn't support him. She dragged him down. She lacked vision. Marissa walked past polished shoes and silk dresses, her heels quiet against the stone floor. She wore a simple navy dress, no jewelry except a thin gold ring she hadn't bothered to sell. Her hair was tied back neatly. Her hands didn't shake. But inside her chest, something old and heavy pressed against her ribs. The church bells rang. Evan didn't look back again. Marissa Hale used to wake up before sunrise. Back when Evan was still drowning in debt and denial, she would rise quietly from their bed, careful not to wake him. She brewed cheap coffee, reviewed numbers at the kitchen table, and sent emails to banks that had already said no. She didn't wear heels then. She wore socks with holes in them and a cardigan she'd owned since college. When Evan's real estate firm collapsed, it was Marissa who called every contact she had ever saved. It was Marissa who negotiated payment plans. Marissa who sold her grandmother's bracelet to cover payroll. Marissa who believed that loyalty meant staying when things got ugly. Evan called that weakness. He called her boring. The night he left her, it was raining hard enough to blur the motel sign outside the window. He handed her divorce papers without sitting down. "I need someone who pushes me forward," he said. "You hold me back." Then he slept with his investor's daughter 2 weeks later. Marissa never told anyone that part. She didn't scream. She didn't post. She didn't beg. She packed her suitcase and disappeared. Now 3 years later, Evan stood at the altar, fingers laced with a woman named Lydia Cross, young, polished, praised for saving him. Lydia wore white satin and confidence borrowed from money that had never been tested. Her smile was wide. Her parents sat proudly in the front row. When the vows ended, Evan turned toward the crowd. His eyes scanned the room. They landed on Marissa. For a split second, his mouth tightened. Then he smiled. At the reception, Evan lifted his glass. "I want to thank Lydia," he said smoothly. "She believed in me when I had to leave behind mistakes. When I finally chose ambition over comfort." A few guests clapped. Someone glanced toward the back row. Marissa took a sip of water. She noticed everything. The way Evan avoided certain words. The way Lydia's smile froze when he mentioned the past. The way Evan's lawyer shifted near the bar. Marissa hadn't come for revenge. She came because Evan invited her. Because he wanted her to see. He wanted her small again. A black limousine pulled into the reception drive. Not flashy. Not loud. Just steady. Guests turned. The venue manager straightened nervously. Marissa stood. For the first time all night, Evan frowned. As Marissa stepped outside, the driver opened the door and nodded to her. Not with curiosity, but respect. Evan watched from across the room, confusion crawling into his smile. And for the first time since the motel room, Marissa felt the balance begin to shift. The music inside the reception hall kept playing. Soft strings. Polite laughter. Glasses clinking. But outside, near the stone steps where Marissa now stood, the air felt heavier. The driver closed the limousine door gently, as if sound itself mattered. "Ms. Hale," he said quietly, handing her a slim leather folder. "They're ready when you are." Marissa nodded. Her hands were steady. She looked back through the tall glass doors and saw Evan watching her. His face wore a tight, confused smile, one he used when he didn't understand what was happening but didn't want anyone to know. She turned away. For years, she had waited for that feeling, the urge to confront, to shout, to spill everything. But it never came. What came instead was calm. The kind that only arrives when the hardest part is already over. Marissa walked back into the reception hall alone. Conversations slowed. Heads turned. She didn't rush. She didn't pose. She walked straight to the table near the center of the room, where Evan stood laughing too loudly with investors who once ignored her name. She stopped beside them. "Evan," she said. Just his name. He blinked. "Marissa. I didn't think you'd stay long." "I won't," she replied. "I just needed a moment." The room leaned inward without realizing it. Lydia turned, her smile polite but unsure. "Hi, I'm Lydia." "I know," Marissa said. "Congratulations." Evan laughed, sharp and uneasy. "Is everything okay?" Marissa looked at him. Really looked. Same jaw. Same eyes. Same man who once told her she was replaceable. "Yes," she said. "Everything is exactly where it should be." She opened the folder. Marissa slid one document across the table. Then another. Then another. "These are deeds," Evan said, confused. "Why are you—" "Evan," she said gently. "Do you know who owns the East Cooper parcels your entire expansion is built on?" One of the investors shifted. Another leaned closer. Evan swallowed. "That's old paperwork. We leased that land years ago." Marissa nodded. "You did. From a shell company." She paused. "I bought that company 18 months ago." The room went silent. Lydia's hand tightened around her glass. "That's not funny," Evan said, forcing a laugh. "You don't have that kind of money." Marissa met his eyes. "I do now." A gray-haired man at the table cleared his throat. "Evan, if this is true, we need clarification." Marissa turned to him. "I'm Marissa Hale, managing partner of Lowcountry Meridian Holdings." Several heads snapped up. The lawyer near the bar stiffened. "I didn't want my name involved," Marissa continued calmly. "I stayed silent. I invested quietly. I watched." Evan shook his head. "You're lying." She slid one final document forward. The lawyer reached for it first. His face drained of color. "Oh," he whispered. Marissa closed the folder. "There's more," she said. Evan's voice cracked. "Stop. You're embarrassing yourself." She turned to Lydia. "You deserve honesty," Marissa said softly. "So I'll give it to you." Lydia frowned. "What is this?" Marissa looked back at Evan. "Tell her when you started seeing her." Evan's jaw clenched. Marissa nodded. "I thought so." She reached into her purse and placed a phone on the table. A timeline appeared on the screen. Dates. Messages. Hotel receipts. Photos. "You cheated," Marissa said simply. "While we were still married. While I was begging banks to keep your company alive." A low murmur rippled through the room. Lydia stepped back. "Evan, is this real?" He grabbed her arm. "She's twisting things." Marissa's voice stayed calm. "The dates don't twist." Evan slammed his hand on the table. "This is revenge." Marissa didn't flinch. "No," she said. "This is consequence." She turned to the room. "I'm selling the land," she said. "Effective immediately. To a rival developer." A gasp. Evan's face went pale. "You can't, my entire company is built on property you don't own," Marissa finished. "And never did." The investors stepped away from Evan like the floor had cracked beneath him. Lydia's eyes filled with tears. She removed her ring. "I can't," she whispered. Then she walked away. Evan called after her. She didn't turn back. The music stopped. No one spoke. Evan stood alone. Marissa watched him for a moment, not with joy, not with anger, but with something closer to closure. She picked up her purse. As she walked toward the exit, Evan's voice broke. "You were supposed to need me." Marissa paused. She looked over her shoulder. "I never did," she said. Outside, the night air felt clean. Marissa stepped into the limousine. The doors closed softly. And for the first time in years, she smiled, not because she won, but because she was finally free. Loyalty doesn't make you weak. That IT just reveals who never deserved it. If this story stayed with you, subscribe. And tell me in the comments, what moment changed everything for you? I'll see you in the next story.